Morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are on our beautiful planet. Heather coming to you live from my dining room with tips, tricks, tools, tactics, and training on how to blow up your pretty on the outside life. Do you see behind me where it looks like there's a nice chair and a curtain, and then I've taped a bag up onto the window? That's because Darby the Doberman, my second in command, she hates chipmunks, and she hates them to the point where if I say Chippy, she will literally come in and start barking. She's napping right now, so she didn't hear that. But I took a bag and I taped it up in that window because that window looks out over the south yard. And there's a lot of chipmunks there because they have the sun. They can go up on the porch and do weird stuff and eat food on the mat. And she can put her big fat face right there and she sees them and they're like right there. So I taped a bag up over the window and it looks sort of gross and weird because I have a pretty house. But it's what I have and it's what I'm using right now. So this is what I want to ask you to do in your own life, okay? I want you to use what you have. And one of the things that you have is you have vast knowledge and power. And if you decide to use it for yourself, you're unstoppable. So this is where I'm asking you to tap in and start honoring yourself. And a lot of the things that are going on in your life right now, they might be difficult because you're waking up and you're waking up to what's really going on. And we resist it because it's hard and it's hard to break out of a pattern, for example. And if you know that it's going to get real, especially when you know you need to leave, you know you need to plan, you don't know exactly what's going on and you've never done this before, it's easy to be scared. And what I want to ask you to do is I want you to think about what it would be like to wake up every single day happy, respected, loved, honored, cherished in your finest form, whatever that might be. Not having to defend yourself or not having to make excuses for the way things are or what you are or who you are or what you haven't done or what you have done or what might have gone on. And if you didn't have to throw so many plates up, or if you did throw them up and they all smashed, maybe you just know that you can go get some more plates. And this is what I would like you to know. You can go get some more plates. And not only can you get more plates, but you can get prettier plates at a lower price and you can get more of them. Why? Because you're going to, that's why. So here's what I want to say. Yes, I taped a bag in the window. Yes, it keeps the dog from barking at the chippy. And so this is what you're going to do as you get towards yourself. And it's really coming back to you. You always knew who you were and who you are and what matters. It's just that life gets in the way. And there's an author who I like a lot named Martha Beck. And one of her most famous books is Finding Your North Star. And I have carried that book around and I've read it, and I used to be so tired that I would only read a few pages and then I would put the book down, and I didn't think I could find my North Star unless I read her book. Well, you can just look up in the sky if you can, and if you can see the stars, or just shut your eyes and you get sleep when you know you need sleep, and you can imagine the North Star. You don't have to read her book. And currently Martha is using YouTube. And what she's talking about, and that's Martha spelled the regular way, B-E-C-K. Lately, some of the stuff she's putting up on YouTube is about how sometimes it's like you get hit by a Mack truck, and it's not even about finding your North Star. It's about how your body stops or life stops, or both of those things stop to shake you up so much that you have to recognize that where you are is uncomfortable. And Martha has really great ways of putting things, and she's super smart. So one of the people you could tap into is Martha Beck, B-E-C-K, right on YouTube. A lot of the stuff that I'm referencing, I've studied and I've learned about because I'm such a Capricorn nerd. and I'm a total nerd, I assure you. Some of the ways I'm saying stuff, like grab a song, get your playlist, get going. It comes from both my knowledge of things as diverse as capoeira, Capoeira. Look that up. And neuroscientific stuff. Look up Andrew Huberman, Huberman, of Stanford University. You can find Huberman, Huberman. He's on YouTube. He does podcasts. He works at Stanford. He's incredibly intelligent and well-spoken, and he will spend 45 minutes telling you the neuroscience of it, as well as telling you why it matters. I'm just going to say, go listen to What is Love? Baby, Don't Hurt Me by Hathaway. But Huberman says it better and knows neuroscience, because that's what he is. He's a neuroscientist, and he's incredible. If you have time to study him or listen to him, listen to him. In the meantime, I'm going to say get your playlist together. Think about capoeira. It is a martial art based on rhythm, using dance and community to allow enslaved people to train in their few hours they were given to be in community and so in touch with each other that they could actually do a rhythm-based martial art while appearing to be dancing and socializing while getting ready for their uprising. And boy, did they have some uprisings, and they didn't always achieve the objective, but they didn't give up. So what I'm telling you is not to give up, never surrender. And if you do have to surrender in your POW camp that you're in, it's name, rank, and serial number. And you can keep your mind free, or you can get your mind free. And no amount of bullshit things that have gone on have to stop you from achieving the objective. And if I sound a little, that is like the pug with the inner fire, okay? The pug with the inner fire is bringing it today. And one of the ways I tapped into the inner fire of my pug self was to also study animals and to think about what I could learn from them. And one of the animals and creatures that brought me the biggest lessons was the toad. And I used to go outside and garden before I left, and after I left, I still do. But it was an escape for me from the interior of the home, especially on Sundays. And I didn't have anybody to do capoeira with, but I could go outside, and I kept getting met by a little toad. And the thing about the toad is that the toad stops, doesn't move, sits there. Toad, unblinking. Toad. I have to blink as a human. Toads don't have to blink as much as we do. Toads can go under the dirt in the winter, and they can stay alive under the dirt, and then they come out, and then they're hopping around, and they need to sort of stay in the shade, and they know to go under the dirt in the winter, and they get themselves down deep enough that they don't freeze to death. So I learned a lot from the toad, and I learned a lot by reading about what toads are and then applying it to my life and reverse engineering the fact that I had been a toad in my own life. And I gave myself compassion, and I gave myself credit for being a toad. And I knew how to dig down at a certain time to go far enough underground that I wouldn't freeze to death. And I also began to use my toad capabilities to see, to stay quiet, to be serene, and to allow things outside of me to be. Look at them, I'm blinking. So I'm asking you to think about what some animal spirits or totems are for you. And I'm not going to get too into the elemental side of it, but I will tell you that one of the things you have going for you, if you feel things deeply, is that you feel things deeply. And you can tap into that as you learn to empower yourself. And one of the things I'd like you to do is take your own feelings very seriously. And even if you're having a thing go on in your own house where you express yourself because you want to communicate, and by nature, you may be a communicator. And in fact, it may work against you in many cases, because since you are a communicator, you think the other person is a communicator, but they might not be. They might only be putting out certain things. And it might be designed to make them look good and sound good. And so, yeah, one of the things that I learned, and it was very difficult to learn and come to, was the public persona, and the fact that in the home, that public persona that I loved so much oftentimes was replaced by this other person that I didn't seem to know was quite capable of being extraordinarily cruel, unsupportive, unavailable. Yeah, I could cook a really good ossobuco, and people did come over, and I loved having people over, and I loved the meals, and I loved everything about it. But I was the one upstairs going to bed and not feeling that same love that had occurred in the dining room. And I was the one who, no matter what I said or how I tried to say it, couldn't actually get my points across, and I was waiting for apologies that never came. So if this sounds familiar, what I'd really like you to do is take yourself seriously, understand that your depth of feeling and your ability to try to convey points, it's not because there's anything wrong with you, and the hope that you have in being heard is a really valid hope. And you will find somebody that hears you. I hear you, and I understand you, and there are many of us who do. And there are women like me who it took us a long time to tap back into our power. But it doesn't mean that we didn't have the power. It means that we dimmed our shine, and it means that, yeah, we turned our own light down, but it never went away. And so now I want you to turn it back up again, and you shine it. And you shine it for yourself, on yourself, and around you in such a way as you bring up your own power and you call it back to you. And I'd like you to use this phrase, which can help you. And if you write it down and you imagine it, it can be tremendously helpful too. And this is where freeing your mind comes into play. There are people that talk about manifestation, and they're really excellent at teaching you stuff. And one of the visualizations that I've learned, and I'm going to shut my eyes because it really works to shut your eyes, and you have to make yourself the star of your own movie, the producer, the distributor, the director, and you're going global, and you are winning prizes, okay? We're talking Cannes, we're talking Sundance here. You are that person. So when you shut your eyes, you're going to say, I call my power back to me. But before you say that, I want you to say, I know I have given you my power. I now call my power back to me. You can literally put your arms out, or imagine yourself doing it. And you open your arms and you bring your power back to you. And then one of the things I found helpful was I point. And I point. And I imagine that person walking away, and they're walking further and further and further away, and I'm pointing and I'm telling them where to go. Okay? And you can do this with your mind. And it helps you call your power back. And you can use it, especially in specific instances with a specific person who may be crossing your boundaries and who you may feel you have given up power to. And they have, in fact, been the recipient of your power, and you have given them that, but they also took it. And so in that, and what I do refer to as an uneven power dynamic, what I would like you to also know is that at this very moment in time, you can call your power back to you. And you don't have to do it in a chest thumping, I'm King Kong. You can do it in the way that power really is, which is it's in the moment, it's there for you, and it's yours to use for yourself and for others. And I want you to think about power over and what that implies. And then I want you to think about how you've tried to be unilateral and all these words that are like implying equal and equanimity and equitable and fair. And I want you to think about the fact that if you work like this, it's a support for you. And I want you to be able to draw on it as you work towards creating greater freedom for yourself in your mind and in the outer reality that is. And one of the ways you do that is you become first inconvenient to yourself, as I've talked about in previous posts, and then you become inconvenient to others. And the others that you may have to become inconvenient to may have control of the finances. They may have the bulk of assets in their name. You may have unwittingly been allowing them more control because they, just by virtue of what their profession is, may have professional skills and credentials. And so in giving up power and control, you actually were trusting them. So this is where compassion and self-compassion comes in. Because when you have somebody with a different operating system and somebody that uses power and control differently than you, you don't always understand how that's actually going on. So I want you to use self-compassion. I want you to look unblinking both at the outer and at the inner, like the toad. And I want you to understand that you've been operating in certain circumstances to just get by, especially if you're a mother, especially if you have a job or you have other pressures exterior to you, where you're keeping going, you're keeping going, you're keeping going. And like Martha Beck is talking about, suddenly like Mack truck stuff happens, okay? And it stops you, but maybe the Mack truck happening isn't you getting run over, but it's somebody outside of you that you're needing to take care of. Or it's a situation that you're completely committed to. Perhaps it's fundraising. Perhaps it's helping a cause. Perhaps it's making sure that if your kid has a healthcare issue that it gets managed because they might have a chronic thing go on that you know in later life, if you don't handle it with them now, could impact their longevity. Anything. I mean, we all have this stuff, right? So just know that you're not so far off track. And in fact, in going off track, when you get back on track, you can realize how on track you are. So it's all how you frame it, okay? With this said, what I would like you to do is really think about what keeps you going and how you keep going. And I'm going to give you a book to think about. This is by Joseph Marshall III. It's called Keep Going, The Art of Perseverance. And in his book, he says grandfather says keep going. Well, I say grandmother says keep going because my grandmother made it to 104 and a half, and she's an inspiration for me. So as much as Joseph Marshall III, author of The Lakota Way, says grandfather says in the book, I just switch it to grandmother. And this is where your own personal will and your willpower and your everything that you have going for you, including the unblinking toad, can inform you that in fact how you look at things, how you dig down in the earth to stay alive in the coldest of winters, tap into those spirit animals and tap into who you really are, and know that when you recognize the call coming from inside the building that is you pick it up and you answer yourself. And you say, hi, honey, how are you? Haven't talked to you in a while. I love you. Start talking to yourself with kindness and compassion. Start loving yourself and start realizing that some of the stuff going on and some of these lessons that you're having, even though they're super sucky and difficult, that when you truly come back to yourself and you're under full steam, even if you're taping up garbage bags so your dog doesn't see the chipmunk, You got a little quiet. So use it for you, find it for you, and also understand that yes, you can literally shut your eyes and you can call your power back to you by recognizing that your power is, and it is something that has gone out of you, but you bring it back to you. And the person that has taken it, and that yes, you gave that power to, but you didn't know exactly how they might use it. You do have a different concept of power. So I'm not asking you to blame or shame, but you can literally shut your eyes and point your finger and you send that person away, and you can do it in your mind, and then you can do it with litigation. And if you have access to capital, one of the things that I want you to do is really understand where your money is, how it's being used, and understand that the person that is willing to try to break you and bend you in ways you never thought you would be broken or bent by the person that claims to love you, they may very well bend or break rules, and they may very well, in fact, have a history or a thing going on in some other area of your life that unfortunately you might need to use as a tool to not only figure out who they actually are and to frame what actual reality is, but in my case, I was willing to litigate, even though I didn't want to. And the things that were going to propel me forth were knowing that I had stayed in my integrity, and I had finally figured out what was going on to the point where I was willing to take it to trial. And I knew that the law was such that the law would actually see what was going on. And even if I couldn't prove everything, or if my own very own things that had occurred for me that I know for me are abusive, even if the law wouldn't see that, the law couldn't ignore certain things. So this is where notebooks and writing things down and knowing what was said and not just blowing it off becomes very important. Because if you have a 20-year history of being a great and good mother, a great wife, a great this, a great that, but the very person that claims to love you isn't treating you in a loving and compassionate way, and they're yelling at you and they're scaring you and they're doing stuff, I don't really care what the court says, but I do. And I figured out how to make that work for me, but it took some circuitous paths. And yes, one of those paths was having to fire my first lawyer and get a much stronger litigator, and realize that my very nature, although I'm not confrontational and I don't smash, that I am scrappy and I'm dedicated and I'm loving and I am good, and that I did get off track and that things were not serving me at the highest level. So I'd like to tell you that even though things are difficult, I'd like to have you think about what it would be like if they weren't so difficult, and if every day you didn't wake up wondering what might happen before coffee, or keeping yourself quiet when you know that you don't really need to be in a regime. And if you're holding your tongue, and if you're not saying things, and if you're swallowing it down, that your body at the cellular level and your spirit are being damaged, and the who you are isn't in joyful expression if you're keeping quiet, and if you're being yelled at, and if the force is not equal, and if even when you try to exert force, that yes, the force that comes back to you is stronger than yours. It doesn't mean that you don't have strength and power. It just means that you're Yoda, okay? And they might be Darth, and they're very Darthy, but Yoda is Yoda. So think about that, okay? Yoda is the bomb diggity, okay? Baby Yoda, not so much, but Yoda, So just be that, and use your Jedi powers, and be good and be great, and use litigation and study what's going on in your own life from an informed perspective and with compassion. So I'd like you to write down why you love yourself, what's so great about you. I want you to write a love letter to yourself. Make it long, make it short, make it however you want to make it. But write a love letter to yourself and start tapping into your own capacity to love and putting it back into yourself. I reverse engineered love back into myself via loving my child, our child, as I'm supposed to call him by court documents, and by allowing the animals that were around me to love me and to inform me. Lately, I've been being informed by a praying mantis. And mantises are amazing because even though they have a little small bug brain, their entire head can turn sideways and look at you, and their entire head moves independent of their body. And when they actually fly, not only do they fly, but they look like two bugs based on the way their wings move. So just know that all around you is inspiration, and all around you is love, and all around you is greatness and goodness, and that you can tap into it. And the one of the ways you do it is by loving yourself, having compassion for yourself. Do not stay in despair, because once you pull yourself out of this lower vibe stuff and you raise your own vibration up, you tap into your power and you become self-propelling, and it gets going faster and better and faster and better and faster and better. So feed yourself, feed your mind. Understand that your mind is incorruptible. So you're going to press the Activate Now button, like on your computer when you run one of those things that gets the bad programs out. Activate now. Do it, because you're worth it. So love yourself. Love yourself, baby. A couple of other great books that are really easy to read that help a lot. Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood and Little Altars Everywhere. Read those books. They're a lot about life stuff, motherhood, what it truly means to honor yourself, and why it matters to act. And sometimes you don't know why people do the things that they do. And sometimes you can't trip on what they're doing or why they're doing it. You just know they're doing it. And so it's about what's right for you. And it's about the concept of right action. So one more hero of mine that I'd like you to look up is Dorothy Day. Dorothy spelled the regular way, and day, like daylight, like sunshine. Look up Dorothy Day and look at what she did and how she did it, and know that she was catalyzed from being a housewife at an ironing board into a symbol of what it means to stand up for what truth and right and good and great really is, and what struggle is. And understand that there are women like Dorothy Day who use their very quietness and their composure and their goodness to compel others in ways that defy logic but create new reality. So just start creating your own reality. Love yourself and write yourself that letter. Okay? And if you like my content, please come back. Like, share, and subscribe if you feel okay doing that. And if your situation is such that you feel completely out of control in your own home based on things going on that are making things untenable, horrible, awful, scary, and you're trying to keep everything together, really like you to call the National Domestic Violence Hotline. Look them up. I'd like you to really seriously consider calling a shelter either in your town or nearby and call their hotline and start getting some stuff off your chest, because you don't need to carry that around alone. And there's a lot of people out there like me or you that are trying to keep all the plates in the air when really it would be fine to let them smash, and it would be fine to move next door. And I'm gonna close with this. Charles Dickens, charity begins at home. Well, the next bit is justice lives next door. Well, I drove away and then I went to a faraway location, And then I moved across the valley, which where I live is next door. So just know that if I can do it, you can do it. All right, see ya. Bye.